Maria, how is it
Very
going?
well, thanks.
Very well.
Yeah, super happy to be in Hamburg.
Okay, we will be honest CMOs today.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, good. Laura, how are you doing?
Well, thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, pleasure to have you both. Am I official? Is this okay?
Absolutely.
Gucci, Zalando say approved? Okay, good.
Bit streetwear, casual.
Oh, see, they're not being honest to start with.
fashion
Okay,
colors.
honesty from now on, right? This was the trick question.
Okay.
So, next level CMO already sounds a little bit like a TikTok thing, right? TikTok story. Maria, what is next level for the CMO for you?
Next level for me is more a differentiation in terms of a generational shift. So where we are today versus where we're going to go with our marketing efforts. Specifically also looking at Gen Y and Z. So I'm very close to this generation and already manage across generations, I would say. So I see a shift in terms of mindset, in terms of priorities, in terms of having a very, very clear approach and honest conversation also with my teams. So
Okay.
I feel a lot of pressure,
Yeah?
I have to say. And next level for me means data, insights, and very transparent communication.
Cool. Does that also mean that you need to shift the way that you hire because of that?
Definitely, yeah. So the issue is a bit at the moment that who I would like to hire versus who applies, there's a big delta. So I'm really looking for data-driven, analytic people within my team. I'm also looking for females, but 80% are men applying to the jobs. So it's a bit tricky for me, I have to say. But it changes the way as we take more time to hire. We have to work with headhunters for almost every single position, even at lower levels, right? So even at entry levels, I'm now looking for headhunters to have also some female leaders to come in the team. So definitely there's a change.
Really good. So apply, right?
Yeah.
Good. Laura, how is it for you? Next level, what does that mean for the CMO?
I think the role of a marketeer or a CMO has never changed faster than in the last 15 years, right? I always joke that when I started my career, the internet was still blocked on our work computers. And if you were the website manager, this was kind of a career dead end, right? Because there wasn't really an e-commerce shop or anything. And it was really like the playbook of a marketeer was fairly limited. You had TV, print, radio, but also it was very much limited to the big companies with the big budgets. And communication was very much one-sided, right? It's like brands had an information monopoly, right? They were talking to the consumers. And now this is completely reversed. Now consumers are more knowledgeable than ever, more connected than ever, and they crave a genuine two-way communication.
Cool. I mean, like, talking about honesty, I also follow Zalando. So maybe can you explain this relationship between, yes, we want to have an interaction, but there's performance marketing versus branding, and how do those two things come together in that interaction for you?
Well, I think when you look at performance marketing, right, when you're a startup, this is normally your first channel of choice. Why? Because you can clearly measure input and output, right? And you can steer towards our ROI. But especially as a consumer brand or retailer, you ultimately come to the point where you want to build an emotional connection with your consumers, and you can't do without brand marketing. But I would always say I don't want to see it as performance marketing versus brand marketing, but really just see both of them as important touch points in your customer journey or on your way to actually deepen customer relationships, right? Performance marketing is continuously evolving.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether it's new compliance, iOS 14, third-party cookies, so it's no longer the end-all, be-all, right? So I really feel like brand marketing is making a strong comeback.
Very cool. I wondered about that point when I thought the difference between the two brands or companies that you work for, and in one of the parts of a great article in the book, which, as we heard, you can pick up here also, mentions that you say, hey, it would be great if people would come back 1 year later, 1 year and a half later. So how do you do that, this combination of performance, quickness, conversion, and branding when the horizon is not buy something next week, but buy something in a year, buy something in a year and a half from now? How does that work for you at Gucci?
Yeah. So for us, as you already said, it's very much going back to branding, to authenticity. So we work with a lot of events, so our event budget has never been higher, especially for VIP customers, but also for customers who've shown first interest. So we see them also registering but not purchasing yet. So we also sort of upfront invest already to see for them to purchase in the near future. So events and also some omni-channel experiences. So if I have some digital savvy customers who start online, I want to ensure also I can make them convert very soon. But at the same time, it's a challenge to have really the true omni-channel view and to create experiences which last. For us, I mean, at Gucci, the beauty is that it's a brand with a long story in terms of heritage as well, right? So we have a creative director who is super, super strong and has a very strong vision. When I see, for example, the Fashion Week, fashion show is happening tomorrow, when I see the briefing also in terms of his mindset, his thoughts about fashion, about the psychological aspect, it's really next level as well. So this, of course, I think is important for brands also to have this true connection to creativeness, to be authentic and to really also make a difference.
Very cool. One of your colleagues from Krombacher said in the book that he believes that the communication aspect of branding, marketing overall is a bit lost, that we lack empathy, that we're actually not necessarily listening. Just to continue on your thought, because you mentioned that there's a designer, there's a creative leader that goes into the direction of authenticity, maybe give me a little bit of a flavor of how do you listen? So is there a listening part in that? And how do you integrate that in your daily work, in your role?
So we're very much aware of the roadmap. Sometimes we only know 2 or 3 weeks ahead which products are going to come. So we have to be super agile. Of course, everything has its advantages and disadvantages if you have this big organization. So we pair his creative vision with our data and insights team, with the research we are doing on our end. We have studies in terms of consumer mindset, consumer shifts. We are working with personas, of course. We're having brand equity studies. So we sit on one table and say, yes, this topic is super relevant for the consumer, and it's great also to transport it into fashion, into self-expression. But at the same time also, we analyze together which touch points make most sense, at which time, which age group, demographic information, etc. So we basically pair our knowledge in that regard.
Cool, so collaboration from
Yes.
that angle.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How is it in Zalando?
I think it's not so much really about conversion, right? It's really what it's the better for the eyeballs, right? It's like you have to cut through the noise, right? And you have to stay relevant. And this many times companies choose to do this through, for example, shocking in their advertisement or wanting to do something really provocative. And I think we always try to be very conscious of what type of emotion we want to convey with our brand marketing campaigns. And we try to do this value-based approach, right? Where we find a certain consumer insight that is relevant, right? We are both through the research, and then obviously we have the advantage as a retailer. We also have a lot of first-party data that we can use. And then we try to capture the sentiment. I think we were really successful doing that also during the pandemic, really in the early stages, where we, for example, we had a sports campaign where we were super agile. We worked with you, right, on, we filmed it all via drone or remotely, or then when everybody was staying home and was so bored, we came up with the Style Day Friday initiative. So it's really about capturing a common sentiment or an insight that, especially with Zalando, that's active across so many different European markets, is kind of a common denominator. And then when you build on that, it kind of spreads like wildfire. And this is really what makes a successful campaign, if you have this moment of truth inside that just resonates with so many people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think both of you use words that I relate to as touch points also. But underlying what I felt also preparing for today is that actually both of you and your colleagues propose a little bit that CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, is actually the Chief Value Officer in a way. Like, can you maybe elaborate a little bit, Laura? Because I know you have thoughts on what are the different parts of the value chain that should come together in your role, and it's not just the marketing, the CDO, the commerce part?
Yeah, I think more than ever before as a CMO, we have to be both left-brained and right-brained, right? Because maybe before the internet, a CMO was somewhat of a creative director, right? Or could really rely heavily just on creativity and creative skills. And then in the tech industry or with the internet and tech companies, a CMO then many times was just a pure performance marketeer.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays either or no longer works, because you have to be able to really talk the talk and walk the walk so that you actually can claim your seat at the board table, right? If you look back, not even Coca-Cola did have a CMO for many years, right? Coca-Cola, I believe, pre-pandemic spent $1 billion on marketing. I think now maybe like 900 million, and the highest level marketing person was an SVP, right? Yeah. So I think it's the understanding really the importance of brand marketing as being a long-term value driver and a tangible value driver when it comes to share price and profitability. But then also as a marketeer or a CMO, being someone that doesn't shy away from measurability. Because if you say, you know, oh, yes, you can never 100% measure human emotions. That's impossible. Yeah. But we have to find proxy KPIs that allow us to convince our stakeholders to be able to make these long-term investments. And I think this is really the big challenge of a CMO today.
Will you reveal your killer KPI? What's the one you go into the board with and say, here it is, now let's go for that?
Well, CLV is my number one KPI.
All right, cool. Do you have one too? The killer KPI?
Not to kill it, I would say, but to come exactly to own it. I think the cost per acquisition and retention rate still are super, super insightful, because if you make some minor tweaks, you can generate a lot of additional revenue, but also branding KPIs.
Very cool. One thing, now we ended on a financial measure, but I think both of you, we were talking a little bit backstage, that there's this hard aspect to everything. And I think many of you in the audience have seen the press release that Patagonia is giving their company to the globe, and I wanted to chat to the both of you about purpose, values. Sustainability is one for them. I think there is diversity and inclusion, there is justice. What is the hard topic that resonates with your brand narrative into your daily job, and how do you take decisions based on that?
Mm-hmm. So, very big question, of course. So, this is, I would say, work in progress, while on one side, as we do work with consumer insights, and I think that's also a team and also investment bucket which has been extended hugely in the last month. I have to say, no one had data, insights, consumer behavior so much on the roadmap versus like 3 or 4 years ago. So this is a good first step. At the same time, for us, it's very important to be there also where we see an innovation, a change driver. So, for example, we always try to integrate these current topics into the fashion shows, which are happening 5 times per year. So, for example, when the abortion right in the US fell down, so we also included a message with "My Body, My Rights," for example, on the back of a jacket within the fashion show. So our key differentiation angle is always to be very vocal, very edgy also, and super direct. Yeah. Because it's like the era of bullshit, and that sense is over. Yeah. So you have to really, as you said, walk the talk, and it's for us one of the key assets really to always be very daring in terms of communication.
Very cool. Laura, how is that for you?
I think the same applies to us, right? Like you say, it's always work in progress. You can always do better, but it's good to start somewhere. And I think in my work, it's the diversity and inclusion commitment that we have at Zalando, where we try to break fashion gender stereotypes, is the most prevalent. And we have a clear commitment that in all of our campaigns, we want to show diversity when it comes to body shape, age, gender, race. And we also we take a stand in it, because you would be surprised how sometimes in other countries there's still pushback, and we have had it that we have some TV spots that are only allowed to air after 10 p.m. at night because it shows two men kissing, for example. But then instead of saying, you know what, we're not going to show this, or we're going to adapt our TVC, we're like, okay, fine, then this is what we stand for, and we still, when we accept that we can only show it after 10 for this marketing campaign in this respective country.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we also get some comments on social media. I was telling you, this just happened this week. And there we also clearly take a stand and say, you know what, this is what we stand for. And we expect to see more content like this. We will not be silenced, because this is what we truly stand for. And I think if you always take a human perspective, right, because as a big brand or a big corporation, it's easy to also be silent, you know, like to say, oh, we will not get involved in the discussion. But I had a former boss that once told me, just put yourself in the shoes of how this person feels like, right? We have a micro-influencer that you know, posted content for us, we reposted it, and then how they would feel like. And it's our job to stand up and make it right for this person.
And do you feel, I always imagine you meeting the other CMOs of this world in this really nice, cool club that I'm not invited to, clearly. No, but when you talk to others around you, is that now, I'm just lucky to have two great female leaders here at the table that think like that and act like that, or is that common sense now in your sphere of peers?
I would say it depends a little bit on the industry, because there's always first-moving industries, right, that are closer, let's say, maybe fashion, or is a faster-moving one, or maybe beauty, because of the price points, maybe when it's more entry-level, or how the consumers are younger. But I feel little by little, it's no longer a drop, it's already a wave, and it's coming, right? And if it hasn't reached you yet, it will, because it's not going away, right? Again, bringing it back and now aging myself to when I started my career, right? I feel like I was very lucky, because I just started when performance marketing and social media erupted, right? And I had bosses that were like, I'm too old to learn this, right? And now they almost missed the boat. So I think it's very important to always, and as a marketer in particular, always stay on top of the trends. And you know, maybe you don't have time to be on TikTok for 4 hours, fine, but I'm sure you have people on your team that are on TikTok 4 hours a day because they love it, probably 8 hours, right? Because I think that's the average usage time in Germany. So listen to them, right? In your team meetings, like you say, ask them, what's on your discovery page? You know, what are your friends talking about? What's relevant for you? And you can really get a lot of really great insights, and not to be afraid to ask questions, right? To say, what's this trend on TikTok with the sounds, right? Why is it now all about sounds on TikTok, right? And they will happily explain it to you, so.
Yeah, totally. We'll talk about trends a little bit more later, but before we go there, I wanted to come back to, because you both now mentioned data, and you both mentioned qualitative input as data. And I was curious as to how you combine those in your daily lives, because data is not new. I understand from also the book that using data to the way that you two and others are is now the next level of literacy in it. But how do you combine the two, qualitative, empathetic insight with hard first, third tier data, buying them, understanding, and then personalizing them? Where's the balance? How does that work for you?
So we have now finally set up common dashboards for both creative and performance teams. Exactly. So I think to first set the guideline and say, okay, where do we want to go? What is our target state? And how do we get there? You often have very different opinions across the table. Yeah. So it's good to finally have this level of awareness, to have the right people discussing with each other. And dashboards are just a very objective form then to argument even less based on taste, but by facts. So we have this now as a step included. Still, we have challenges like the attribution modeling, for example. So even if I can measure now a lot more than previously, it's tricky in some instances to attribute it to a certain channel, to a certain campaign, right? We still have all this offline limbo, let's say, where we're not 100% sure where exactly also traffic, insights, and brand demand come from. But at least this is something we're integrating now in our daily in that way.
Yeah, super. And it's probably also like, because you said you do more live events now as a
Yeah,
means to get into
exactly.
it, so you have to come back to reality
Yes,
of out of
yeah.
digital.
And also for events, right? I mean, there are now certain KPIs in terms of value proposition, in terms of new customer acquisition rate, in terms of sales generated, leads generated. So there is now, at least we try to integrate in all branding tactics, KPIs as well, although of course it's often not easy.
Yeah, it's a discourse. How is it at Zalando? I actually, because you said it, I think you have, because of the way that your business works and the pace that's in it, you have all of this data going on. My idea would also be like, how much do you listen in and then take a decision and then wait and see what happens, other than always reacting. How does that work for you?
Well, I mean, like you said, I think in Zalando we were always fairly data and insight driven per se. So working with data is nothing new for us, right? I think what we also really try to do is to build a strong brand arm for this, right? And I think it's good to listen, but it's to inform your decision, but it's not the end-all, be-all, right? There's always this Henry Ford quote to say, you know, if I would have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? So you want to make sure that you listen, but then it's the job of the marketing teams to actually draw the right conclusions for it or from it, right? Because sometimes consumers cannot adequately tell you what they want, or they do use different words, right? It's like. And so I think this is very important, and then also to building these brand KPIs that allow you to also measure the impact. And we actually built our own KPI for this, what we call brand heat, right? Where we actually measure our brand marketing campaigns, where it's a combination of qualitative and quantitative research. It also incorporates social listening tools, right? So the overall positive sentiment, both around a campaign and around the brand in general. And this is then how we also try to steer and track how we are improving, hopefully, on our brand marketing.
Oh. Yeah, and I think you mentioned with the trends a little bit earlier, and for me that's related somehow. You both need to understand what's going on right now. What are people doing? What are they liking? How hot is your brand right now? And then there is NFTs, the metaverse, the bullshit bingo goes on and on and on. How do you choose in your role what matters? How do you try? Does it really matter? And when do you stick with something, or when you say, okay, that's a fad, that's something that will be there for half a year and then it's gone?
I think, luckily, as marketeers, we can try a lot of things, right? It's not that we make a lot of irreversible decisions. We're not brain surgeons. So the repercussions of trying something that then ultimately doesn't turn into a big trend is rather limited, right? So, for example, we try to always go where our consumers are. And then when TikTok in the pandemic exploded, it was really very easy for us to double down on it, because we had actually already launched our channel in the summer of 2019.
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, this seems like a cool new platform. Let's try it, right? We have young people in the core target group on our teams, and then they're excited about creating content. And then if it hadn't worked out, maybe we would have abandoned it later on. But the same thing of, we also piloted Twitch. So at one point, we wanted to deepen our relationships with male customers. So we said, okay, what are the channels where we can really interact with male customers? So of course, we looked at Twitch. We looked at OneFootball, what I heard a lot of men have on their phone. So those are fairly easy things, right? Or even in the pandemic, when online dating exploded, we did very successful advertising on Tinder and Bumble, right? And I feel like at the time, all the brands were on these dating apps. So I think it's really about trying what works, and if it brings the conversion, you can scale it. You can easily test it in one market, and then if it's successful, you roll it out to your other markets.
Really cool. Was Gucci on Tinder?
No.
All right. Okay. Why not?
Brand safety, you know, it's a bit...
Fair enough. Cool. But how does that go for you? How do you integrate innovation and trends, not just channel-wise, but also generally? I think, as for Zalando, even more so for Gucci, the heritage of producing fantastically engineered, beautiful things now goes into digital, and what does it mean for you in terms of how you work and how you choose where do we go, what do we do?
Yeah. So on one side, we always have an innovation budget, which I put aside because you're never aware, right, which trend is maybe popping up in Q4. So you always need to have a certain buffer to be present on platforms such as the one you mentioned, for example. We have now a lot of applications, even job applications via TikTok. People are reaching out to us. Then also we have gaming influencers, so experts within certain games, gaming stars, who we also invite to our events.
Cool.
To sort of close the gap between digital environments and also offline events. Then also Metaverse for us actually has been very successful. So the ROI is 3+, 4+, so it's actually pretty good. We have started to buy land. We have also launched our online merchandise store, so we're also selling some goodies there. While at the same time also I have to say that maybe it's not for everyone, right? You have to be aware that the audience is often around 16 years old. So for me, it's also an ethical thought to say how much do I want to advertise in a space and already push my ads to this super young audience. But for us, it's a great playing field, really, to test and learn, and at the same time also to really have the failing culture established, and not only always talk about the failing culture, but we say, okay, we go for it, we test it out, and then if it doesn't work, it's no problem. So we just look forward, and that's the approach I've implemented within my team, because I think we've been talking a lot about failing culture, but not many dare to really execute. So if you have a certain framework, of course, in which you operate in, I think it's really good to test and learn and to be live also on the various platforms.
Yeah, and you already mentioned that I think if that's part of your ways of working and you're trying to attract more diverse talent, is there, maybe you can share a little bit, how did you change the way that a CMO has a team around her, not just in terms of failing culture, but how do your days look like to have a different way of working together?
Yeah, so also here, for example, we have now genderless collections, so everyone can just purchase what they like. And this also is reflected in the mindset of the teams, right? They're super diverse, super agile as well. And as said also at the beginning, we really need more data analysts, marketing analysts within the teams. Yeah. So now I had the headcount hired for a few people actually in that segment. Same also for the Metaverse team. So for me, the key question is always to ask before I jump on a certain project, do I have the right workforce available already or not? Because I don't want to work with 10 agencies, but maybe 2 really strong ones, of course, which have knowledge I personally don't have in-house, but I also need to have the resources in-house. So for me, it's a very strong need also to always ensure we have both enabled agency teams plus also in-house knowledge. And as said, here we really have very diverse teams who are also up for challenge.
Yeah, really nice. I mean, I live in Berlin, so I see the front door of Zalando every now and then, and I feel like you have a diverse team. How is it for you? Diversity, inclusion, getting the right talent. Is there something that you tweaked in your ways of working to be a next level CMO?
Well, I think, at least for my marketing teams, the pandemic was really hard, right? Because marketeers are, by nature, very communicative people that thrive on collaboration. So I know in this new hybrid setup that we also have, we took many trainings on how to manage hybrid. And from talking to some colleagues in different areas, they have teams that never want to come back to the office, right? They love the remote setup. They wish they could stay that way. Whereas my marketeers, the day we were allowed to come back to the office, they were all there. And so I also had to change the way I structure my days, right? Because at first I was like, okay, when I come to the office, then I will do all my one-on-ones. But then I realized one-on-ones I can easily do remote because it's just the 2 of us. What's really important is that I have time at my desk with the team together, that these quick conversations can happen again, right? When somebody says, hey, I have this idea, etc. So I think for me it's really important to be in the office present together, and I find that the teams really like it, and in their personalities they thrive on that. Then in terms of other skill set, I think diversity is number one, right? Not only in terms of personal backgrounds, but also in terms of skill set. I always say, you know, it's the attitude that matters. It's this being thrifty and being a goal-getter. The rest I can teach you, right? It's not rocket science. Of course, we need a good mix of creative people and people with more analytical background. But I also think in an ideal setup, they're all in one team, because this really does create team spirit. And that also then it's not like, okay, they're just spending the money and we have to analyze whether they spent it well, right? Then we are towards this common goal. And you will be surprised how many good insights and ideas people who said they're aren't creative, in the end up having, right? And so it's really the teamwork, in my opinion, that makes the magic in marketing.
Really cool. So I guess the takeaway is next level means focus on value, not just selling. Focus on collaboration, not just telling. Focus on listening and combining qual and quant and having a really diverse team. It was a pleasure to talk to the two of you about it. Big hand of applause for these two.
Thank you.